Welcome to my dojo. This is Kung Fu Pizza Party, and I am your host, Brandon Knight. I apologize for my absence as of late, because in the process of launching this dojo, I moved. I know that sounds spontaneous, and in some ways, it kind of was, but the good news is that I finally found my podcast equipment and can get back to recording episodes for you all. Now, as I continue to get settled into my new homestead, today's episode is sadly still not our first review. Yes, the Kung Fu movie review podcast still has not done an actual movie review, but instead, today I am going to broadcast for you all a portion of an episode that came out earlier this year on my other podcast, My Seminary Life, where I am joined by my friend and host of Shell Shocked, a TMNT series, Joe Day, to talk about the career of Chuck Norris. Now, because of the time restraint here on Kung Fu Pizza Party, you're only going to get about a 20-minute chunk from what is actually an over hour long. It's like an hour and 20-minute long episode. So if you're interested in checking out the full conversation, then head into the description of this episode. You can find a link to that so you can get all your Chuck Norris goodness over there. That's right. We're going to be talking about the career of Chuck Norris here today, specifically looking at some of his early movie highlights and some of our personal favorites as well. I promise our first true movie review will happen soon. Because this episode just kind of trails off and rides off into the sunset, I'm going to go ahead and do the usual outro stuff and say thank you for checking this episode out. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening so far. I have been very blown away by the download response so far with these episodes. So thank you for listening. If you haven't yet already, please consider following the show on Instagram. That is our show's, this is my show's social media home, and trying to get the follower count up over 100 before the end of the year. I feel like that is very plausible. So if you have Instagram, please follow at Kung Fu Pizza Party. And that is it. This is Kung Fu Pizza Party, where we're delivering high-flying action in 30 minutes or less and serving up wisdom one slice at a time. And now, enjoy the episode. Film-wise, so he's been in a bazillion films, it seems like. Good Guys Wear Black, A Force of One, Breaker Breaker, Lone Wolf McQuade, Delta Force, Missing in Action Part 1 and 2, which for those of you who care about chronology, watch 2 first. Don't know why, but watch 2 first. For you, Joe, what are some of your favorites and some of your favorite scenes from Chuck Norris's filmography?
So those two, or that crop that you just rattled off are all phenomenal. But I'm gonna go, knowing that you were probably gonna go with those. I wanted to hit a couple that maybe are a little outside of what people would go for. Code of Silence.
Okay.
Is one that was RoboCop before RoboCop. He's plays a sergeant that with his crime fighting robot, and it's absurd because the whole thing is based around the war on crime or the war on drugs. And so like he's like this commando with this crime fighting robot fighting these drug kingpins, and it's ridiculous, it's over the top, but it's probably one of my favorite Chuck Norris films.
I think I saw that one like once a long time ago. And yes, RoboCop before it was RoboCop is a great shout for it. I think my all-time favorite is Good Guys Wear Black, because you do have the iconic windshield scene. Another one I really like, again, kind of on the like maybe outskirts of his more popular films, although I've never met anybody who actually likes Breaker Breaker. You ever wanted to watch Chuck Norris be a truck driver? Yeah. That's
Yeah,
the pitch, apparently.
that's the
But
pitch.
one that's a little bit more on the outskirts side, like Silent Rage. You ever seen Silent Rage?
I have. That was going to be one that I mentioned.
I like that one. For those of you who haven't seen Silent Rage, it's on all of the free streaming sites. Tubi,
Yep.
Pluto, Roku, Freevee. It's on all of them. It's like Night of the Living Dead. Everybody has this movie.
Everybody has it.
It's usually in the horror category. I would say it's more thriller than it is horror. But if I remember right, it's been a while since I've seen it. If I remember right, for those of you who haven't seen the film, Chuck Norris is kind of cast more in like the Harrison Ford typical role of like normal guy, not really like the action hero, war hero that he usually gets, but a little bit more like the normal guy role. Him and his wife are staying at a cabin, and there's like a serial killer guy who's stalking them. And most importantly to the plot, he's hopped up on drugs. And for all of you who are unfamiliar with substance stuff when it comes to self-defense, being intoxicated affects how your body receives and interprets pain. So no matter what they do to this guy, he just gets right. He no-sells everything. He just gets right back up, and he's still chasing them. It's a it's not really like scary, gory kind of horror film. It's intense. It keeps you on the edge of your seat, and it's a little bit of a different role for Chuck.
Yeah, it's so a lot of places will describe Silent Rage as like a proto Terminator sort of movie.
Okay.
With the way that they show his progression into like this is kind of science fiction meets martial arts in a way, where he's trying to fight this guy who's built almost like an unstoppable force, all because he's on drugs and all of that. And what, Chuck Norris has to become the monster in order to fight the monster, sort of thing.
It's always a safe bet. You have to become the monster.
Yeah.
I guess in a way, he's kind of the villain that is like a Michael Myers, but not as cool.
Yeah, I think that's a very safe way of saying that.
Yeah, not as cool. And a lot less martial arts. Do not want to see Jamie Lee Curtis doing martial arts.
No.
Anyway, any other of the deep cuts that you would like to highlight here?
So I think as far as deep cuts, I would classify it as a deep cut, because I think it was very brief, but the Expendables 2, phenomenal. The way that he was, the way that he was cast in that. But Firewalker from '86.
Oh yeah, okay.
Basically, guys, if Indiana Jones knew karate, like that's about the size of it. Like it is very much that explorer sort of role, but for a guy that would defend himself with karate and martial arts.
Again, sometimes these pitches aren't that hard.
Nope.
What if Indiana Jones knew how to throw a kick?
Yeah, essentially. Because it's as simple as they find a treasure map, our team of heroes are going after a stockpile of gold, and from that point, ridiculous ensues.
Now, there's one big cameo that Chuck Norris is in that I do want to talk about. And no, I'm not talking about his cameo in Dodgeball. But before we talk about his... I thought that would get a laugh. Before we get to this big cameo, I want to play a what-if game with you. Because I know you're a big fan of these 80s action films. So I'm curious, Joe. You take all the big named guys. So you got like Chuck Norris, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, anyone else that you can think of. You're going to put them in a pit, and it's the 80s, okay? Not current day, because I wouldn't put current day Bruce Willis in a fight pit. That's rude. prime of their careers. We're putting them in a fight pit. Who's coming out on top?
Oh, I would. There's certainly an argument for Chuck Norris. If he would have continued to be on the scene and a part of the same conversation with everybody else, Bruce Lee tears everybody apart.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
But yeah, head and shoulders, I can't think of another person who's in this kind of like 80s, 70s, 80s action hero sort of thing. Like, yeah, Chuck Norris.
Yeah. When you get like 80s and 90s and you start getting guys like Jean-Claude Van Damme,
yeah,
maybe. I would be hesitant to say Steven Seagal. I know there's people out there who like Steven Seagal. I'm not one of them. So
people can be wrong. It's fine. It's fine. We're welcoming people here, even people with bad opinions. Shout out to Josh.
Yeah, maybe Jean-Claude Van Damme. But because he's got the build and he's got the move set. But still, like, you have to rely on the fact that if Bruce Lee was still around, he probably would be out kicking everybody still.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, if you guys have ever wondered why, the 1-inch punch and why, Bruce Lee is considered this freak of nature when it comes to strength and size comparisons and all of that. When you are trying to hit something and hit it as hard as you can, the name of the game is acceleration with whatever your whatever it is that you're doing, a punch or a kick or whatever, and then the snap of the actual hit. And so the amount of acceleration and the force of the actual snap of the hit that Bruce Lee could get with a punch or a kick was absurd. Like, it was just out of bounds. It's people spend their entire lives trying to train what this man did.
Oh yeah. Entire lives, even just trying to get into the shape that Bruce Lee was in, let alone be able to recreate the magic of his fighting style. I've done the 1-inch punch through a board one time. I've done it successfully one time. I tried it again another occasion, could not do it. But I got lucky one time doing it. But yeah. And speaking of Bruce Lee, let's talk about that iconic fight, the greatest accidental booking in history. Way of the Dragon. This is like Bruce Lee on the rise. I think it's also known as Return of the Dragon because all of his movies have two titles. One is like the traditional Hong Kong title. The other one is the American title. It's Way of the Dragon, though. I believe this is the one right before Enter the Dragon comes out. So this is Bruce Lee hot on the rise. And there's a scene in the movie where he is in a fight against some guy from the karate tournament scene named Chuck Norris. This is like Chuck really early in his acting career, no beard. And oh, by the way, it's in the freaking Coliseum. How did they know to put it in the freaking Coliseum? How did they know that years later people would look back and go, oh my gosh, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris fought each other? And it's not just like outside or in a bar. No, it's in the freaking Coliseum.
It's in the Coliseum. Yeah, so this is actually his debut. This is the first time. First time in '72. It was the first time that Norris ever took a seat because, like you said, it's accidental booking, basically. Yeah. And so, honestly, I think one of the things that has led to the longevity of the mystique of Chuck Norris is the fact that he is linked to Bruce Lee. And the fact that Bruce Lee died when he did, and he was just this mysterious figure, and just was able to do what he was able to do. And then on top of it, you have Chuck Norris, who lives the gimmick, who is like, this is a way of life for him. And then coupled with, like, when he came through the popular zeitgeist and all of that kind of stuff, I think that was the perfect cocktail to make Chuck Norris this long-lived name in action media and all of that. But yeah, I mean, so I thought about it, and I'm like, is there really? Because Wave the Dragon for me is the benchmark. Like, you, for
Oh,
me,
okay.
that's what you compare the rest of his work to.
Okay.
Is any of his other work as good as or better than Wave the Dragon, as far as just the quality of content? Now, he is not the main character, so he's not really like, a lot of people don't classify The Way of the Dragon as one of his best movies, because it's a Bruce Lee movie,
Mhm.
not a Chuck Norris movie. But him playing the nemesis and the foil to Bruce Lee, being this intimidating American figure, like intimidating on his own, but then also playing an American, like being an American, playing the role, and the
Mhm.
juxtaposition there, it's shot surprisingly well, even though the character of Tang Lung that Norris plays in the movie, like, wouldn't necessarily be my cup of tea normally, like
Okay.
outside of that movie. But just that entire fight sequence is so stinking good
Oh yeah.
that that has become like the top of the mark for me for his stuff.
Yeah, again, it's like, how did they know? Because
Yeah,
this isn't like some little throwaway 3-minute match. Like, this is a long fight sequence between Bruce and Chuck, and it goes back and forth for sure.
yeah,
One of the best moves in the fight is, of course, like I said earlier, Chuck Norris, no beard, all of his hair on his chest, incredibly hairy. And Bruce Lee takes a handful of it and blows it away. Like, best
yeah,
move in the entire. I've never seen it since then. I've never done it myself. Hopefully someday. But but it is just like this amazing moment of like, how did they know? And you get this, although Bruce Lee is technically American by birth, this very good East meets West kind of fight
yeah,
sequence.
yeah,
And again, adding to the mystique of Chuck Norris. Another reason in all of this longevity, Chuck usually comes out on top. Bruce Lee kills him in this fight. And it's
yep,
like, that is the one person that even Chuck Norris could not overcome. And that says something. I think
yeah,
to the mystique and the legend of Chuck Norris, that says a lot.
yeah. Like, just like the fight sequence is about 10 minutes of unbroken camera work,
Hmm.
and it's just two guys. And Chuck Norris has done interviews after the fact, where there were parts of that were a shoot fight. And
That's
like,
insane.
yeah, he's like, he's like, I fought a lot of guys in my life. He's like, I've never fought a guy who hit as hard as Bruce Lee hit. And like, so that was a shoot fight, and then just this dude, just barrel chested, hairy as can be. I'm like, this is some man stuff. Like, this is ridiculous. You
For
know what
sure.
I mean? But it's in and it felt weighty. Like, the whole
Hmm.
movie, like, it felt like it was trying to do something,
Hmm.
and you felt the gravity of the situation, and then the overcoming hero in it, and all of that kind of stuff, you know?
And what's cool about that is the fact that even though Chuck Norris is presented as like the final big boss in this film, he actually gets shoehorned in. It's not like Chuck Norris is running around being the foil the entire time throughout this plot. He shows up there at like the very end, essentially, and it still works.
Yeah. And that's for the basis of martial arts movies, that's kind of how it was.
Mm-hmm.
That's why for those, and I'm about to date myself, for those that are of the vintage that to have played arcade fighters, that you have like the ladder, that's it's taken from the old style martial arts movies, where you would work your way up the ladder and then you would have this menacing big boss at the end. It didn't need to be somebody who was in the entirety of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like the last big, like the bad guy is giving gravity because of the quality of the good guy and the story that has been told up until this point. That for the Way of the Dragon, this whole thing hinges on everything that Bruce Lee brought up to that fight scene, and then those two square up, and that fight scene needed to be quality in order to be remembered as good, not so bad it was good. Because there is a classification of martial arts movies where it's kind of like the original tokusatsu stuff, like Godzilla, Ultraman, all that kind of stuff. You can see the strings on some of the stuff when it's blown up into high definition and all of that. In this, it's that storytelling, it's that quality of performance, it's the character work of Bruce Lee, and then these two martial artists just beating the tar out of each other for 10 minutes. And there are some things like ask anybody that does, less than full contact fighting, we'll call it, that there are some times that the best way to sell a fight is to shoot fight.
True. That is true. Not the first or last time that Bruce Lee would get accidentally booked into a fight against a prominent named person later on in their career, though they did not get near as much screen time as Chuck Norris. If you look very quickly during Enter the Dragon, he does beat up Jackie Chan at one point. At the beginning of Enter the Dragon, he fights Sammo Hung,